Welcome to The Helping Conversation, an exploration and celebration of the practice, art, and science of facilitating trusting, safe, inclusive, and effective helping conversations with others. The helping conversation is at the core of the sacred partnership between two people when one is there to help the other. Recorded at RockVox Recording and Production Studios, Rochester, New York. Find your voice and broadcast it to the world at RockVox, rockvox.com. And now your host of The Helping Conversation, Keith Greer.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Helping Conversation. Thanks for sitting in with us today. I am excited on a whole lot of levels about our conversation that we're going to have today. First of all, it is our 10th episode of The Helping Conversation. It brings to a close our first season. Thank you, everybody who has weighed in and shared their thoughts and subscribed, and really appreciate it. And we're getting a sense that this is a conversation that people are finding meaningful, so thank you. As many of you know who have been following the podcast, a number of episodes ago, my guest was the Rabbi Alan Katz from Temple Sinai here in Rochester. And we had a wonderful conversation about how he facilitates a helping conversation through the lens of the faith of Judaism. And we're going to continue our conversation today around faith and the role that faith can play in helping people move their lives forward. And so it is an honor and a privilege to welcome my guest for today's episode of The Helping Conversation. Please join me in saying a very big hello to the Reverend Dr. Marlowe Washington. Good morning.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So happy you're here, and looking so forward to our conversation today.
I'm excited to be here, Keith. It is just a pleasure. I just love the atmosphere here. I love what I see, and it's just wonderful to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate that.
Oh, well, thank you, and I agree. Scott does a great job. There's a nice vibe in the room,
really nice.
And so let me fill everybody in a little bit on Pastor Marlowe. So the Reverend Dr. Marlowe Washington was born in the Bronx, New York, and is a product of the public school system, dedicated to social and political activism. His ministry and community engagement reflect a diverse range of causes and strategies within the goal of working to create justice and equality for all people. He is a graduate of St. Francis College in Brooklyn, New York, with a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science with a minor concentration in history. He attended Princeton Theological Seminary, Seminary in Princeton, New Jersey, and in 1997 graduated with a Master's of Divinity from the New York Theological Seminary in Manhattan. He then graduated from Northeastern Seminary at Roberts Wesleyan College, attaining the Doctor of Ministry in Transformational Leadership. He successfully completed his second doctoral degree at St. John Fisher College in May 2019, earning a Doctor of Education in Executive Leadership with a concentration in diversity and inclusion in higher education administration. Known to all as Pastor Marlowe, he was ordained an itinerant deacon and elder in the African Methodist Episcopal Church in 1989 and 1997, respectively. Pursuing his calling, Pastor Marlowe has overseen 6 congregations in the Northeast, from Harlem, New York, Providence, Rhode Island, Newark, New Jersey, and now in the Rochester, New York area. He is driven by social justice and entrepreneurship, and successfully completed various housing projects, economic development initiatives for the poor, and oversaw the merger of 2 American Baptist congregations. Currently, Pastor Marlowe is the senior minister at Seneca United Methodist Church here in the Rochester area. And again, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I always like starting this conversation with my guests at a little bit at the beginning. So just maybe a little bit of your journey, how you ended up coming to this calling, and then specifically here to the Rochester area.
Right. Well, I when I start with, as a professor too, I always start off with an introduction to my class, and I always start off an introduction to my class with myself, and in that question, how I started this journey, and because I teach New Testament and in a Christian college, I talked to the class where I began this journey not wanting to be in this journey. And I started this journey originally wanting to be, at 12 years old, I wanted to be a social studies teacher. That was my whole passion. I love teaching. I wanted to be a teacher, a social studies teacher, specifically Monday through Friday, and an umpire with the New York Yankees on Saturdays and Sundays.
All right.
That was my whole dream.
That's
what I wanted.
Yeah.
I wanted to be an umpire on weekends and a teacher Monday through Friday until God came and messed me up. And then I got the call at 12 years old to enter into the ministry. Now, I couldn't do anything because, I'm only 12.
Right.
But I felt a calling. I felt and I heard the voice of God speaking to me about entering into the ministry and do his will and forsake all others. That's exactly what I heard. Forsake all others. I didn't know what that meant, but I was scared. So scared, I started crying. I was crying because I said, no, I'm not going to do this, whatever I feel.
Right.
This pull, we call it. I'm not doing that. I'm going to be a teacher, and I'm going to do everything I can to be a messed up kid and show God I can mess up, And that's what I did, And I've been running for a couple of years. I've been running. But the more I ran, the more everybody said, there's something about you that seems to be like a calling. Yeah. And they affirmed that calling. That's the thing I didn't want people to say. To affirm that I have a calling to enter into the ministry, which meant that I had to sacrifice just about everything of my life. Right. I didn't want to.
Right.
I wanted to be a normal kid, and do what kids do. I didn't go to the movies. I didn't play the way I should have played or did certain things because my whole life was devoted to prayer and consecration of my life to the Lord. I gave my life to the Lord. But while I'm giving my life to the Lord, I'm also saying no to the Lord at the same time. Right. Finally, I had to give up. The burden was so heavy on me, the tears profusely coming out of me, a burden on me so heavy that I finally said, I'll do it. I'll give it up. I did. And I surrendered. And the moment I surrendered and realized that no matter how I can try, to want to fulfill my purpose, God had a higher purpose for me. Right. And then that's how I gave in to God. And I submitted to his will. And the moment I submitted to his will, it was like the burden was lifted up. And I entered college knowing that I'm going to become a minister. So it was around the college period, right before I went to college, and I was in South America being a junior missionary. That was where I finally gave up. And I said at 17, I'm going to be a minister. Right. And that's when that burden was lifted. So that's how I knew that this was a higher calling that was beyond me, but it was of God.
So I am a very firm believer that most of us in the helping professions, this was a calling. Right. This is something we knew Correct. In us from very early right. on. But I'm really curious. So you're describing a 12-year-old boy right. who wants to be a teacher and a baseball umpire. Right. Hearing the word of God.
Right.
Do you come from a family of strong faith,
right.
service through faith?
Right.
I'm just curious.
Yes. So Keith, I come from a strong family of faith. None was a minister.
Okay.
So I'm the first minister, but my family was staunch religious. That's all
right.
we knew.
Right.
That's all we knew what to do and how to be. We got our strength from our religion because religion, particularly in the Black community, and particularly that long ago in the Black community, was strong. You could not go to church.
Right.
It was a sacred thing you had to do, and that was it. So that was my upbringing. But I really don't think me being a minister came because of that.
Okay.
I think because of the idea that I was minding my business, to be honest. And hearing this voice, hearing God saying, "Leave all else and
right.
follow me. Come with me." Now that could, and I I had to look at that. What does that mean? Leave all else. I mean, that could have been, all sorts of situations. And God said to follow me. I mean, that could have been, I could have been a member of the usher board,
right,
or on the choir, or do some other kind of religious activity in the church. But no, it was the ministry, the highest thing that God can give you for his people in the church. And it was to leave all else, to sacrifice. And I gave up. I didn't even have a regular dating, a dating agenda. I couldn't date the way my friends were dating, because I was just so much, while I'm afraid of God and afraid of what God is calling me into, yet there was part of me that was submitting to that.
Right.
But that was my conflict, that I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to go there, because I knew if I went there, I had to do somebody else's will and not my own.
Right.
And I was selfish. But evidently I had to give up.
Yeah.
And I gave up.
So at 17. At
So
17,
at 17, that's
you
when
had
I
this
gave
vision,
up.
I am going to.
Yep. So the moment I was probably just wrapping up high school, that's when I gave up, and I surrendered to the Lord. And that's when my whole life started moving in a new direction. And for when I graduated in June, I think 2 days later, I was off for 2.5 months to Guyana, South America, where I was a junior missionary of the church. That's where I really found the Lord there and talked to the Lord. And that prepared me to, once I came back to the States, I entered right into college. And my pastor, who was my mentor, he was my incredible mentor. He told me, I don't want you. He had a very deep, that type of deep Southern voice. I do not want you to do anything in religion while you're in college. I said, excuse me? He said, do not do that. And so I call him Pop. What are you saying? He said, because you're going to be doing that for a seminary. Right. So you need to do something else to also have to have other experiences
right.
with you. So he was so correct. So when I went to college, I didn't do any religion. Because the real religion will count in terms of the profession when I get to graduate school, seminary.
Right.
But in undergraduate, do anything else, so that I can gain the experience. So I love the sciences, social sciences. Political science was where I was heading in history, and that's what I graduated school from until I went to seminary.
So you beat me to my next question, which is role models, people that inspired you.
Two.
Okay.
Two important men. To this day, I think about them every day, every single day. I talk about them like if they were here and alive. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I may even get filled up talking about them.
All right.
Because both these men and their wives were my parents.
Yeah.
They were my parents. You see, I lost my father very young. I was only 15 when my father died, and I was very close to him. So I remember my father on his deathbed. He went to Reverend S. Frank Emanuel. That is my spiritual father. He went to Pop, and he told him, I need you to do me a favor. And Pop said, what? I need you to look after Marlowe. I want you to take care of him. And that you're his father. Take care of him. And Reverend Emanuel did just that. He honored that, and he told the church that from the pulpit. Now, the church I grew up at, St. Luke African Methodist Episcopal, which is a very large church, and he told the people at St. Luke growing up that I have a son that I need to take care of, to the point that he helped pay half my tuition bill.
Wow.
The church paid half my tuition bill and took care of me. So he is what I call my birth father. He birthed me into the ministry, Reverend Emanuel. And him and his wife, Margaret Emanuel, those two, I slept at the parsonage, which is the official rectory of the pastor, which was right next to the church.
Yeah.
Don't ever want to live next to the church no more. They were my parents. Yeah. They were my parents. No ifs, and no buts.
Yeah.
And then when I went to seminary, the seminary has a policy where I had to do field education work. And so Pop didn't like it. He was very angry. He felt that I was leaving him. And I said, Pop, I'm not leaving. I just got to fulfill 2 years of my seminary work, because he didn't want me to go away to college. Didn't want me to go out of state. He wanted me to stay close to him because he had dreams of me not taking over the church, because that we can't do that, but to work alongside with him. He had other dreams and aspirations. So I said, yeah, I'll stay in New York City area. But the seminary that I went to, which was Princeton, and I didn't stay at Princeton, but it was where we have to do our field education work, and it had to be elsewhere, not in your home church.
Right.
So I had to go to another church, and it was in Harlem, just a few miles down the road, to Bethel AME Church, and there was my second father. His name is Reverend O'Neill Mackey Sr. And Reverend Mackey, I call him my theological father because he's the one that pumped the theological aspect in me. So Reverend Emmanuel birthed me and gave me what it meant to be the kind pastor, the loving pastor, the servant leader pastor. Reverend Mackey was the pastor that gave me the opportunity of learning what it means of being the theological pastor, the scientific pastor, the type of pastor who is a critical thinker.
Right.
And so I had these two worlds that I had to now figure out how to mesh it together and to be a minister of quality and excellence, but truly being a servant leader. So that became my model. That became the role that I needed to go into, being a servant leader, not a leader, but being a servant to the people. And so that shaped and formed who I am today and what I am and whose I am in regards to that. So those two men and their wives, they both are dead. All four of them are now dead. Yeah. Reverend Mackey, on his death, I have all his robes. So when he died, his wife called me down. In fact, I was here. He died in 2009. And told me, I went to the funeral, cried my eyes out. It took me at least maybe 3 months to recover. Yeah. It was a very painful thing. And she said one of the things Dad wanted to do, and I call him Dad, was you have to have his robes. So I have all his robes, and I am just so I'm elated about that. And so it's not a moment, and my wife like, oh God, here we go again, that I talk about these two men and their wives as they're everything to me. Yeah, they're everything to me.
Yeah. So I'm curious about something you just said, because if I heard you correctly, you differentiate between being a leader and being a servant leader.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Right. Leaders are people, in my opinion, that could be in it for themselves and can demonstrate a commitment that the loyalty is to them and not to the people. And so servant leader is a selfless attitude that removes yourself from the equation because it's always about the people and not about you.
Right.
And so that's how I differentiate between leader and servant leader. Leader also is one who can be a status quo, who can just do certain things because that's what they found is there and is easy.
Right.
And you just lead without any work, without any intervention, without any innovation, without anything to really move people from A to B. As a servant, I'm always about the business of how to make life better for you to move from A, which is the current reality, to B, which is the next reality or the better reality.
Right.
And so that for me is about how do I move people from A to B, knowing that B is the better reality versus the A. And in order to do that, I either have to first been there to do it, or I'm willing to walk with you and do it along the way.
Right.
So that's how I differentiate between the idea of leader and leadership and servant leader.
Right.
Because servant leader is I'm always thinking about what the people want and what they need, not about what Marlowe wants, not what Marlowe needs. And you will know the difference of the type of leaders versus what they want and need versus what the community needs and want.
Right. That's a perfect description. In my head, as you were talking, I'm envisioning those two very different groups of people. Right. Leader versus servant leader.
Right. And so and to me, that's part of the helping profession. That's part of the helping profession. That in the helping profession, and why I was running from God was because I knew that if I was to do what God say, I had to move myself out of the equation. And I kind of seen what everybody else is doing. Sometimes they're very selfish and ambitious, and they want what they want, And so, but when I had to submit to God, I knew it was no longer about money. Right. It was no longer about wealth and material. It was no longer about none of that. God said, when you come to me, that I will take care of you. And it won't be always about wealth and materials and gains and this and that, but it will always be about answering to God and his people. So that's what I see in terms of servant leadership, because it's always a selfless act and a sacrificial act. And so I've once learned from an incredible a theologian. He said, Marlowe, one of the things you got to understand, not everybody was called to go to Rome. Some have to go to Titus. That thing blew my mind. I said, I don't want to go to Titus. Why do I go to Titus? Why am I the Jonah and the big fish? And I got to go this direction when God wanted me to go another way. Why me? I don't want to go to Titus. Titus is just, it's broken and it's cheap looking and it's this, it's that. It might not have all of the prim and propers and all that kind of stuff as this big established Rome is. Right. But we're not called for that. Yeah. And I had to realize that in that language. And boy, that was a great lesson to learn. Hard one, but great one. Yeah.
Two of the characteristics or traits or skills, quite honestly, that I hear you talking about that I think are the foundation of almost all helping conversations. Empathy, I'm going to walk with you. Yep. And action. Yep. Right? That this is not enough to just sit around and say, oh, okay, this is the status quo. This is how do we bring change to our community?
Absolutely. So this is why I love, and I'm enjoying talking with you on this helping conversation, because it's also helping me. Because it also reaffirms what it is that God called me way back then to reaffirm what it is that I'm doing today and what we should do today. And part of that is, if I'm going to be a member of a helping profession, then the question is, who am I helping? Right. And why? But that does not mean that I'm to help them because I'm gaining something out of it. Sure. It is so that we can do the empathy walk, and that part of this is to help you see for yourself where you need to go and how do we create change out of that. And part of that change is how do we create the barriers that prevent you from getting to where you need to go as part of that helping profession, as part of that helping conversation. Right. So when I sit with and I counsel people, that's one of the first ideas for me is how do I help you remove the barriers that you see? Because you first got to see that there are barriers. And my role is to facilitate that, just like what you do, is to facilitate how do we help that individuals to see that barrier and give them the strength enough to move it and give them the tools that they need to move it, because that's the sense of empowerment. That's how you get liberated. And that's, wow, I can do it. I did this. And sometimes when you say I did this, it's because you got to confront that monster. Right. You got to confront the beast. And that beast is in front of you, but that doesn't mean that beast have dominion over you. I'm going to give you the tools so that you can take a slingshot like young David did to Goliath and sling it, and knowing that you did it. And you have the creativity and the strength and whatever else necessary to slay that giant and then cross over and reach the other side.
So I hear you talking about, in my world, we would talk about how do we treat people as the best resource in their own life. Right. Right? That they have within them. Right. What it takes to bring change. So I want to make sure we have time in our conversation to cover three areas: your work as a helping person with an individual, and I know the amazing work you do within the organization or the system of the church, and then I want to make sure we get to the larger, especially in today's world, of helping within the larger community. Right. So in your role as pastor, a congregant asked to meet with you. When you sit down with that person, along with your theological knowledge, and faith knowledge, what are some of the first things you think about in that conversation that will bring trust and safety into that conversation as quickly as possible?
Right. First of all, the way in which I think to bring trust and safety is to suspend my thinking, is to suspend what I think, what I know, what I'm doing, because it's about that individual. Right. That helping profession is not about me, but it's about that individual, to hear he or she, to sit there and to hear them talk and hear them dealing with their issues of life, and then begin from there. And then little by little to show them, again, to walk with them, to help them to see how, in fact, they do have the strength and power to remove barriers, to remove the conflict that is in front of them in their lane, and push those hurdles away so that they can reach the other side. So for me, that's how I gain the trust. That's how we start building that trust, because it's never about me.
Right.
I have to suspend me. It's not my conversation. It's yours.
Yeah.
And so as part of your conversation, I'm here to help you to hear you. And then in helping you to hear you is to say, did you hear what you just said? And then as part of what you just said, how can we use that as a way to be either a strength to help you remove those barriers, or to keep walking towards your purpose, your calling, your destiny, whatever it is that you're going through. Just yesterday I had 2 counseling sessions with parishioners, and one of them is a couple who's getting ready to be married. And as part of the marriage, the bride to be said, well, Reverend, why do you have all these sessions with the couples? Because you got to meet with me at least maybe 8 times before I marry you. I'm just not going to marry anybody just because you want to be married.
Right.
Because I said I want you to hear if you're ready or not. I just want, and it's going to take that amount of time for you to think you're ready. Yeah. Because again, most there are couples who want to be married just for one day, the wedding day.
Right.
To fulfill Cinderella or something like that. So I said, I'm not concerned about your one day. I'm concerned about day 2. So day 2 is to help you understand that you're not going to always have that wishy-mushy feeling that you have right now.
Right.
And that's going to evaporate one way or another, because marriage is hard work. And so my role is to help you understand that marriage is hard work, and here it is. And to help you hear it and see it, and how are you going to manage it and best orchestrate it as life moves on. Right. So that's just an example that, for me, is helping them. And then I bring in little by little, my theological point of view that relates to their theological point of view or their spiritual point of view, and going with Christ, going with the Lord, and showing them from a biblical perspective, a theological and faith perspective, how God can help and answer to a whole host of questions, a whole host of things that one goes through in life. And here's what God says, and here's what we can do to fulfill those things, and best relate to people, stuff like that. So that to me is how I think we build the trust, and how we develop both the trust, but also the faithfulness, that they understand that I'm faithful to them.
Yes.
And that I'm faithful to them, and that what they say is not only safe place and a safe zone, but it's also a sacred one.
Right.
And I don't think in my 27 years as a pastor, as a senior pastor, I never had a complaint about that safe place.
Yeah. Look, that piece about walking into the room as a helping person, and being fully aware that this conversation is not about you.
Right.
It's just not about you.
Right.
And it's not about what you know or don't
right.
know. It's this person
right.
that we are here to be of help to.
Right.
That's a powerful, powerful stance, because so often people walk into the room and they, don't think they have their answers,
right.
and think you have some magical
right.
one.
And I tell them that. And I tell them that there's a couple of things that in the helping fact, because as being one, that they're coming in with all sorts of things in their mind.
Right.
And one of those things that they're coming in nervous, they're coming in with tension.
Yeah.
They really don't even want to come in to talk,
right.
and particularly, and a lot of times, Keith, I love it all the time, that particularly when I'm counseling couples who are getting ready to be married, it's always the guy who don't want to come.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he comes in with an attitude, and I just laugh. So I start off with laughter.
Right.
I start off funny. I said, "So you don't want to be here? You don't want to be with me? You don't want to be with me?" And he just starts just laughing, and then little by little we perk up, because we want to build this space right here. I came into this room and I said, "Holy cow!" I felt such a wonderful energy. I felt that's how I want to do.
Yeah.
The moment you walk through the door, to feel the energy, and when you feel the energy, our talk is going to be full of energy.
Right.
Our spirit is going to be full of energy, and that's what I want to always relate.
Yeah. Look, that's a conversation for a whole nother day.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is. Is the work we need to continue to do in how we raise our boys into men.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
So that maybe at some time our men will start walking in ready to do the work and not seeing it as too vulnerable making or I'm weak or
And that is a concern, particularly, and I say this, it is a concern in the Black community because it's always been a taboo in the Black community about seeing a minister or a social worker such as yourself and going to count, there must be something wrong with you.
Right.
You know, I tell people all the time, there's nothing wrong with counseling. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with therapy. And I myself, I go to therapy. Yeah. I'm not just one who just take in or sit to be a counselor to someone. I go to a counselor. Yeah. And I go to a counselor because I always want to make sure that I'm always in the what I call in the servant leadership mode, and my personal life reflects that because my personal life can be shaky, and I don't want my personal life to be shaky. So there are times, and then when I take in so much, I need to release that as well. So that's why I need people like you to sit with people like me to help me through my own processes because I go through that. So I tell people all the time, and a lot of people say, "You go to I go to one every. In fact, I'm in one right now, right now, this very minute. I don't have no problem with saying that. I go to a counselor. I love my counselor. I appreciate my counselor, and he is a wonderful man that's helping me channel through some things. Some things I do get depressed, and I get hurt, and I get vulnerable. You know, so I need to take that and sit down. So how can you be a helper if you don't get help yourself? True. That's the key of a servant leader.
Yes.
How can you expect to help others if you don't get the first help yourself?
Right. Yeah, I'm with you. And sadly, in my work, in my experience, there are many of us in the helping professions that, as I say, we're good at selling it, but we won't buy it.
Right. I got to use that. Can I steal that from you?
Yes, you can steal that from me.
All right. Yeah. I love it.
I'll counsel people till the cows come home, but don't ask me to go and talk to somebody.
Right. And that's how you know, because somebody said, how do you know if it's a good counselor? Man, I think that's the key right there.
It's huge.
That's the key right there. Right. You gotta believe in your own press. No. Yeah. It's in a lot of ways. So I just think that I love what you said, and it's something that I need to use too.
So I know a very big part of your skill set as a helping person to move beyond your pastoral counseling, maybe with an individual or a couple or a family, is your expertise in building your congregation.
Yeah.
And I think you even used this word when you and I were talking the other day, fixing.
Right.
Fixing the church.
Right.
So talk a little bit about that. What are some of the helping skills that you bring to that larger conversation about this group of people that identifies as a congregation and how you help them move forward as a larger system?
So like I told you before, Keith, God didn't call me to Rome. He didn't call me to pastor, though I have the capability, the skill set, I have it all to do it, to pastor the mega churches.
Right.
The pulpits with 2,000 and 3,000 people on any given weekend. God called me for the little churches, the Titus. Yeah. And so he called me to go into Titus to fix these Tituses and to turn them into the Romes eventually, but I will not be the one to be the benefactor of it. And so that's a serious, hard work, but it's also a serious layer of sacrifice you have to give into, because it means that I will never benefit the fruit of my own work, my own labor, because I will never see it because I'm off somewhere else.
Right.
As a Methodist, I'm at the hands of a bishop, and it's sort of similar to the Roman Catholic Church. You know, the bishops run the bigger hierarchy of the church. When they get ready, they can transfer you, and out you go somewhere else because your skill set is needed somewhere else. Right. And so I'm always subject to that, always. In Rochester here is the longest I've ever served. I've been in Rochester 15 years. My tenure is mostly 4 years, 4 years at a time, and then I'm gone. So I'm known as a turnaround guy. I'm known as a turnaround specialist, where I go into broken churches and fix the infrastructures of those broken churches to leave room and create new innovations for the next guy or girl to come behind me, and then they take the church to the next level. So, but that has caused me some serious problems with my own personal family, because we never stay at any one city long enough for my kids to be kids, or to learn, to have their friends and grow up and stuff like that. So every 4 years, my life is like we pop up and we leave. Now, like I said, Rochester's the longest, but that was at a cost. That was at a significant public ordeal and even humiliation of a cost that I had to pay the price for. But I was willing to pay the price and even defy my former denomination. If you heard me, I said my former denomination, which was the African Methodist Episcopal Church, which is the Black Methodist Communion. And now I'm United Methodist. So I'm still Methodist, but in another branch of Methodism. And because I grew up in the solid Black church tradition. United Methodist is not Black church tradition, although there are Black churches, but it's a more rainbow effect. And so because of my turnaround, Marlowe, you did this here in Newark, New Jersey, which I did. I turned the church around 2-year time. 2 years. I need you to go to Baber in Rochester and do the same thing. Yes. And I got to go. And I got to uproot my entire family. And this was in the dead middle winter. Dead middle January 3rd, 2005. When nothing but snow. Everywhere, every day. And that's what happened. Then you got to go into these settings and you got to reintroduce yourself to the community, the church, the people, the neighbors, everything. And your job is to go in there and turn it around. And so that was my forte. It's a turnaround specialist. And so I'm the one, who go into Titus and turn around these Tituses and hope to strengthen them to become the Church of Rome eventually. So I'm in one now. So again, that tradition, but the difference is I stayed in Rochester. So that was the plan. The plan was don't go to another location. Don't go to another municipality or another state. Stay here and build yet another church. So I'm at now Seneca United Methodist Church in Arundequoit. And that church, when I got there 3 years ago, is experiencing a lot of decline for at least 20 years, to the point of the doors of the church was going to close.
So when you use the word decline could be number of parishioners, the financial wherewithal, the programming,
the culture, the climate, everything you just mentioned declined. Everything. To the point now the church is going to close. And so I'm sent there to try to see the viability of the church. Can the church live, or do we close the church and it dies? So we're in this process now to ascertain, does the church live? Does the church die? And we're changing it as we speak right now. Now, I said 3 years ago I was sent there. But the first 2 years I needed time because I was also finishing my doctorate. So that had to come first. Now I'm done with all of that. So now I'm making the assessment now to determine, okay, where we're at with the church, and what we need to do with the church to make Seneca Church live. It's a great church. It's a great church. It has a beautiful facility, sitting in the residential community on Schofield Road and St. Paul, right off St. Paul Boulevard, between St. Paul Boulevard and North Clinton Street Avenue. And it is just beautiful, beautiful place. So the potential for ministry is alive. It is strong. It's there. It's well over 12,000 square foot of ministry space. And now we're ascertaining, okay, what do we need to do? So part of what we need to do and what I want to do is not close the church. I don't want to close the church. I want to bring new innovation to that community, to that church, and in that neighborhood. And the way of doing that is that we're throwing out the old. Everything is going. Everything. And and the plan is to bring in the new. And part of that newness is also to address the concerns of the current members as well as the neighborhood. What do we need? What should we do in that community, and then redress the congregation to fit the age and time today than what it was 50 years ago at its height.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
So I'm envisioning a great deal of conversation with as you said, present parishioners, great deal of conversation with community leaders.
Yep.
And so you mentioned a moment ago that, I'm just curious about this part. You mentioned a moment ago, within your church, there is a hierarchy, the bishops.
Yep.
Is that where the final decision is made, or that level of leadership is saying to you, Pastor Marlowe, this is your call on the direction that this church goes in?
Right. So it's always the base of the local church.
Okay.
So the local church has the say. And the bishops are there to bring support and whatever else that's necessary, because it's like all politics is local,
right?
All church is local. Okay,
yeah.
So everything is local. Without the church locally, there is no bishop, there is no no hierarchy. So the local power is within the local church. So the local church, in fact, we're really at that point. We've already begun the conversation. We've had it. We had this assessment. We're in the process of finishing out the assessment right now. We hope to be done by say October with the assessment, and then as a result of that, we make the final decision. And that final decision will occur, I think, before November, and then we're ready to move,
right?
And going from there, and then the bigger church will support the direction.
Right.
They will make recommendations back to us as well. We will take that recommendation, consider that as part of that recommendation, ours. We merge it, and then that's where we will think about heading,
right?
And then we move from there. So that's what we're looking at, and the way I'm envisioning is in terms of living and not dying. How might we impact the community in Irondequoit?
Right.
Even to the point, of engaging in a holistic approach. So I'm not the kind of minister that just deals with a Sunday morning service, 2 hours or an hour, and have coffee hour and wish you all well and see you next week. I'm the kind of guy that deals with mind, body, and spirit. So that's more than just a Sunday event. I don't look at Sunday as just an event. I look at Monday through Sunday as a lifestyle.
Right.
And so we're looking at ways of how we can impact, even to the point of the local economy in Irondequoit, to the point of the educational system, the social service system. How might we become part of the rubric of the area and the town on an everyday perspective? And so that means if we have to create a 501c3, a corporation, that's what I'm thinking about doing, and alongside with the church, then that's the new innovation, or some other type of clinic, or some type of other kind of way to incorporate the church with the rubric and with the society as we see it. Then that's how we're going to do it. That's how I see the church to live at this point.
So I'm envisioning, as we move again from maybe a conversation with an individual to a conversation like this, which is more systemic, that you are part of how you help is that you lead the conversation about change. Now, we all know how much us human beings love change.
Right. Barely.
Right.
Right.
So I'm curious, when you have run into what I think we tend to run into with human beings, which is I like things staying the same. What's your role in that? Because we've been talking about that this isn't all about just what you want.
Right.
This is about getting a sense from your parishioners of what would bring meaning to this church, a re-envisioning of this church. So as you run into maybe some of that ambivalence about change, how do you respond to that?
Well, the way I respond to that is I never like when I was sent to Seneca, I didn't make a change. I didn't even move a chair.
Right.
For at least a year.
Relationship building.
Yeah, just total relationship. But in that relationship building is to ask the question, do you see what I see?
Right.
That's the way I make the change.
Right.
The way I make the change is I want the populace to see what I'm seeing.
Right.
Because what I'm seeing is the current reality. Can you all tell me, and that's based out of Nehemiah. So in the book of Nehemiah sees the ruins of Jerusalem. And he goes to the king and say, "Oh, king, can you please send me back to my native land? Because I got to repair what I see." But the thing is, I need the people to see the same thing that I see. Right. So my role as part of this relationship building is to all come to an agreement. Yep, I see brokenness. Yep, I see despair. I see decline. Okay, I never introduce a plan. I just want to know if you're going to first tell me you see what I see.
Right.
Then after we all agreed, yep, we got brokenness here. We got despair. We've got hurt. We've got all kinds of desperation things going on. Then we sit together to say, now we need a plan.
Right.
And so that's the plan. The plan that now, how do we change realities?
Right.
So that's the next step, is how do we deal with moving from a current reality to a better reality? So I try to move the word out of new because people get scared of new sometimes.
Yeah.
So the thing that I say is better. So how do we move from A and then now become B? That's servant leader. Because servant leader is now going to create create a path for us to walk together on, that I will never let you walk alone without me walking with you.
Right.
I either had to walk before you first, or we walk together at the same time. And I preach this all the time in my sermons, that we will never walk, one will walk without the other. We will always walk together, or I have already did it before you to show you it's safe.
Right.
Okay. But the key is that by seeing what we see, you see what I see, is how we will create the way, the structure of a new process of reality.
Yeah.
Because that's what I want you to see. I want you to see what I see, and then how do we create a new reality or new structure of reality?
So as you've been asking those questions, are you finding that there is consensus within your parishioners that this church is not where we would like it to be?
Right. So we all agree. Now the problem is, here's the problem. Do we all agree to fixing it the same way?
Right. What's the plan?
And what's the plan? So we have currently at Seneca a 23-page plan. 23-page that we designed and put together, that's now being negotiated and adopted by the congregation and even the conference, to say Marlowe presented a plan. And the board is looking at this plan of how we're going to change from the current reality, create the structure to reach the new reality.
Right.
And that's all I want. That's all I want. And we walk together in the process. Yes, it's going to, some of that reality is going to be hard.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard because we have to admit our current reality has died. And we've got to now put to death the reality of what we used to know and do, because everything comes to a close. Everything comes to a season.
Right.
And so that is how we do it. And that's the same way where I see, even in leading to your third question, dealing with the global aspect of our community.
Right.
And how doing the same thing in that regard. But what I ask the congregation, as I ask even in the community, never say something is broken and not have an answer to fix it.
Yeah.
But that seems to be our problem. And that seems to be a problem here in Rochester that I've noticed more than the other 3 municipalities that I serve. And I say that because we're slow to make change here.
Yeah.
We're very slow to make change. We are so afraid to make changes, knowing that we are living in ruins spiritually. And I say that in a spiritual term, that we're living in rubbles, and that we're refusing to make these changes because of fear, or, well, we just never did it that way before.
Right.
What's that, the 7 last words?
Yeah.
We never did it that way before. I don't care about all of that.
Right.
I'm going to show you. And so that it's not just me, but it's the reality. The reality of what we see. Let's give you an example. Can we move to the third one that you talked about?
Yeah, go.
With the city, the educational system.
Yeah.
Okay. I am so angry. Keith, I'm starting to freak out right now. I am so angry of the way our city in Rochester and the public K-12 education program is working.
Yeah.
We knew before I came here 15 years ago, this thing was like this.
Yeah.
Even
long time.
longer. Okay. But we refused to make the change. We refused to make the change. Now, I remember when Bob Duffy, he introduced mayor control. That was a big to do. Everybody was, don't want to do it, rough. But guess what? What's the plan then?
Yeah.
If you didn't want that.
Then what? Right.
Everybody was screaming, no, it won't work. How are you going to say something that's not going to work, and yet you don't have it, but what you do have ain't working?
Right.
So how do you say that? How do we say that of things that we do not have? But yet we don't even know that it can work or not because our faith is just shot, or we got these assumptions or best practices because of some other places like D.C. and Chicago and Philadelphia that probably got mayor control or whatever else like that. They're mixed reviews. Well, that's good for them. We're greater. We don't have to do things because the way those other municipalities are doing.
Right.
So what happened to us to try harder or try it the Rochester way?
Right.
Or
do something.
Do something.
Something.
Don't just say it won't work.
Right.
And look what's happening. Because we keep saying everything we keep introducing won't work, can't work, won't work, don't do this, everything. Now our children are the ones that's suffering. And all because of adults.
Yeah.
And I have a problem with that. I have a huge problem with that. That's my issue.
Yeah. So with the potential reemergence of United Seneca Methodist Church, what will be their role in addressing, in talking about, in challenging some of these really community-wide difficulties?
So one of our roles in the educational stream is to create a daycare. We have one, and it's the Irondequoit Cooperative Nursery School. But I would like to see it in a different fashion eventually, where we contribute, in heightening that program,
right?
That matches what it is I just said, and to go about it. That's the oldest daycare program. In Irondequoit, definitely in Irondequoit. Now, I'm not sure about the greater Rochester area, but in Irondequoit, that program, the Irondequoit Cooperative Nursery School, has been around 77 years.
Wow.
The current town supervisor, Dave Seeley, he was a little kid from that program. Okay, that's how long this program has been in the church.
Right.
And so I think so one of my commitment to that is to expand it, to figure out a way, how do we expand that program into a larger scope and go forward, because we have the facility for it.
Right.
We have a market for it. We have the people for it, and to match what I just said with the action.
Right.
So that's how we're doing. And that's part of my 23-page proposal.
Okay. Other parts of that proposal, other directions that you see your church going in to address some of our social challenges?
Deconcentration of poverty.
Yeah.
And I think the problem, I have you sit long enough with me, you'll know I got a lot of concerns. But one of the concerns is that we're not working fast enough to deconcentrate poverty.
Yeah.
And we're not working strategic enough. Though we have our MAPI group that's here, and we have other types of things, but I think that there's a better way of handling it, and even a faster way of handling it.
Right.
That's not going to take us 15 or 20 years to see some systemic, real progress and change.
Right.
And I think that's been the problem. I think Rochester loves best practices. So from what I'm seeing this, and this is my fourth municipality. So I've seen from big city thinking to mid-sized cities, small cities, as Providence, Rhode Island, and how they all operate. Rochester loves to operate under best practices. And so, but most best practices, when we take their practice and then we try to fit it from their square hole in our circle peg,
right?
And then it doesn't fit,
doesn't work,
and then someone is going to go to court. It's unconstitutional. It's thrown out.
Right.
We've seen it too many times here. So I'm not sure why we always best practicing something, knowing that what works for Akron, Ohio, is for Akron, Ohio,
right.
And why would you fit Akron, Ohio, in Rochester, New York?
Right.
So I would like for someone outside of Rochester to study Rochester, New York, that we took some risk. We took some bold steps to make some bold moves and study us instead
right.
of we always studying everybody else.
Right.
So that to me is a problem that I see, that I really struggle with, but I love Rochester. I love the area. I love Pittsford and Penfield. I love where your temple is, the synagogue. I love the area, and that's one of my commitments as to why I stayed and why I stayed long enough, because I love this community, and I wanted to see this community flourish and just go stronger and grow higher.
Right.
I think with some of the things that I personally can contribute into the discussion, into the conversation, as part of the helping conversation, I think is beneficial because I have the skill set, the resources, and some know-how, a little bit, not
Right.
much, that can lend some discussions to the table, and we go forward.
Yeah. What I also hear is that you're one of those folks who will ask the difficult question.
Yeah.
And I think I'm always really curious about this. Is some of what sometimes gets in the way of trying something new,
Right,
is the fear that that thing won't work.
Right.
But it might not.
Right.
But then
you won't
awesome.
know until you try it.
You won't know until you try.
Right. And that was what my concern was, particularly when we went with the mayoral control, as an example, that, hey, it's a new thing, but there's what they call a sunset clause, right?
Yeah.
So there's an out.
Yeah.
You have an out. After 5 years, you can get out of it, and revert back to your old process or come up with something else different.
Right.
So there's an out, and so I don't think we can ever do anything without an out. There's always an out, but we got to try and not leave it up to what we got current, and that's it,
That's it.
And so, but that's the feeling that I see, and as a faith leader, I think we're called to inspire hope.
Yes.
And I do have hope for us. I have hope for this city, for the county, for the areas and communities. I have incredible hope that we will get through this. We will not only get through this, we will reign where others will study us and try to fit us in their circle hole.
Right. Right.
Because we're making some progressive moves that now becomes daring, and we need bold leadership and selfless leadership. That's
the key, right? So your definition.
Yeah.
Right? Of the difference between leadership and
servant leadership.
And servant leadership. Because I think we can look at all different levels of government and we might see leadership. I don't know if we're seeing servant leadership.
Right, we're not. And I'm very concerned about that. I'm seeing that currently. We think we all are seeing that.
Right.
And I think it's time that you're right. I will call it out. And that's probably why some folks don't like Marlowe Washington right now. Is because of that. And I'm not going to call you out where it's to embarrass you or whatever. It's to maybe sit down like this and to have these conversations, hardcore conversations. Say, hey, come on, we've got to do A, B, C. And here's why. Let's look at the current reality.
Right.
See what it is. Is there broken ruins?
Right.
If there is, then how do we develop a path to get to a new reality?
Yeah.
That's all we're saying.
Right.
And it's, I don't care about my name. I'm not interested about my legacy. The legacy, you don't have to build a legacy. You just build that reality, and it'll take care of itself.
That's right. Look, I also think, and you can draw a comparison to working with an individual, that one of the gifts I would like to think that helping people bring to a conversation with an individual is that in our relationship building and creating trust and safety with them, we get to a place where we can speak the truth. Sometimes the truth might be, hey, person I'm working with, do I have your permission to share something with you that might be hard for you to hear?
Right.
On the larger systems level, it's speaking truth to power,
right?
Which we know does not always go over.
It doesn't go well, but it has to happen.
It has to happen.
So that's the reason why I believe God poured that in me.
Yeah.
To be the one to say to the powers that be in the systems, can we do something else?
Beautiful.
Can we do something else? We're not here to hurt you or call you out or to say resign or nothing like that. I've never, ever went on public or in any way, shape, or form to say somebody resign or you're this or that or whatever like that. But, hey, can we have a cup of coffee? I prefer Dunkin' Donut, and to sit down, and can we do something to represent a new reality?
Yeah.
Because the current one is broken.
Yes.
But people loathe on the current reality because it retains their power.
Right.
It retains their name. And that's the problem that I have.
Yeah.
That's the problem that I have, Keith, in this area.
Yeah.
I have a huge, it's so huge that I lose sleep over this sometimes. And I'm praying.
And I'm excited that you're in our community.
Well, I'm excited to be
here. You were here.
To be with you,
Thank you.
To be with you. And you excite me. I was loving reading a lot about all that you were doing. We need to fit everybody in this room. I mean, y'all need to come in here and see this. This is beautiful, and what you're doing, I salute you 1,000%.
Thank you. Thank you. The Reverend Dr. Marlowe Washington, thank you so much for sitting in with me today.
To be here.
This was a wonderful conversation. I have a feeling there's going to be a part 2 to this conversation somewhere.
I'm coming. You tell me when. And it be even in the snow, I'll come.
All right, that's good. Good. I'm going to take you up on that. And the best of luck with moving Seneca United Methodist Church forward.
God bless you.
You and I had that conversation the other day of some of those challenges.
God bless. Thank you.
And good things ahead for you and your church and your parishioners. Thank you for being here today. So thank you for sitting in with us today. And again, thank you for enjoying and weighing in and letting me know what you have thought about our first season. We will be getting ready to start putting together some podcasts for season 2 very shortly. And so keep your eye out wherever you find your podcasts. And I hope that in the future you will join us again as we continue to explore and celebrate the practice, art, and science of the helping conversation. Have a great day.
We thank you for sitting in on our discussion today on just one unique version of the helping conversation. We would love to hear your thoughts on today's podcast, so we sincerely invite you to follow, rate, and most importantly, review our episodes. Please join us for our next episode as we continue the exploration and celebration of the practice, art, and science of the helping conversation.